General Hospital spoilers tease that finally, after countless doubts, internal conflicts, and Alexis' many attempts to cover it up, Christina has come face to face with a harsh truth. Rick blackmailed her mother. Not for power, not for money, but to keep hidden the darkest secret of Christina's own past. An event that seemed long buried under the ashes of memory has erupted like a dormant volcano, consuming every illusion Christina ever had about safety, family, and even herself. The act of cutting Rick's brake line, done in a moment of uncontrollable rage, had nearly killed him. And now, Christina understands the full price Alexis paid to protect her, to keep her free. To keep her from being branded a criminal. That truth isn't just a psychological shock, it's the beginning of a profound and consuming trauma. Christina can no longer sleep, eat, or look in the mirror without seeing a part of her own darkness staring back. She is torn between guilt and fury. Between gratitude toward her mother and the shame of having doubted Alexis, having turned her back on the woman who sacrificed everything to shield her. But that very complexity is what's unraveling Christina emotionally. She's caught in a whirlwind of regret, self-questioning, and unexpected outbursts of rage. Her patience wears thin. She becomes irritable with those around her, and she can't stop herself from thinking about confronting Rick, not out of revenge, but because she needs to bring closure to this nightmare with her own hands. But Rick isn't someone who can be easily cornered. He begins to feel the consequences he once believed would never catch up to him. Being exposed, and the burning hatred in Christina's eyes, is a psychological sentence tightening around his neck. The fear, helplessness, and sense of being controlled that he once inflicted on others have now turned on him. Rick feels watched. Isolated. Pulled down by the very past he once used to manipulate others. Christina, increasingly consumed by her own psychological spiral, starts behaving unpredictably. She begins following Rick. Gathering evidence, even recording old threats, preparing for what she sees as the final showdown. A confrontation she believes she must end herself. Those around Christina begin to notice the shift in her, colder eyes, sharper words, and especially a prolonged silence that feels like a storm gathering. Alexis is worried. But she also knows she can't step in again. This time, Christina must face the truth on her own, must decide for herself how to deal with it, even if it ends in total destruction. Meanwhile, Rick descends into a state of panic. Anonymous calls, cryptic messages, strange looks from old acquaintances, all leave him sleepless, anxious, and haunted by an ever-present fear. He no longer knows who will be the one to finally expose him, Christina, Alexis, or his own long-buried conscience. Paranoia begins to set in. Rick can't tell what's real and what's imagined. Every room feels like it's watching him. Every knock on the door makes him jump. And every mention of Christina tightens his chest, knowing she's no longer the naive girl he once manipulated. Christina's trauma is no longer hers alone, it has spread like a disease, infiltrating every corner of Rick's life. Manipulators never expect the prey to become the hunter, and Rick is beginning to learn that in the most painful way. He set this chain of events in motion, and now he's powerless to stop it. The Davis family, once divided by lies, now stands at the brink of reckoning. Christina, wounded, haunted, has become a symbol of a generation that refuses to stay silent. And that voice is pushing Rick closer to total collapse, where no excuse, no scheme, no threat can save him. Ultimately, Christina will have to face herself, and accept the dangerous truth she's long tried to forget, that she, in a moment of rage, nearly took Rick's life. Though she remained silent and Alexis shouldered every consequence to keep her safe from the law, Christina can no longer pretend it never happened. The sleepless nights, her mother's sacrificial gaze, and the suffocating pressure of the truth have driven her to a breaking point. A deep transformation is taking place within Christina, not just one of maturity, but a sign that she's ready to take responsibility, no matter the cost. This transformation shakes her to the core. She begins reevaluating everything, from her past mistake, to her mother's overprotection, and most importantly, to her fractured relationship with Molly. And it's at the heart of this emotional rupture that Christina makes a pivotal decision. To confess to Molly. She doesn't just want to apologize. She wants Molly to understand the full truth, to no longer misunderstand Alexis. To see why their mother made such strange and suspicious choices in recent months. But this confession is no simple conversation. It's an earthquake, for both daughters of the Davis family. Molly, the most rational and morally upright of the three sisters, is devastated by Christina's confession. Not just because of her sister's dangerous actions, but by the shocking realization that Alexis knew the entire time, and chose to hide it. Amidst this chaos, Molly no longer knows what to believe. She is pulled into a brutal inner conflict between two extremes. On one side, her father, Rick, who used Christina's mistake to manipulate Alexis. On the other, her mother, who bore the weight of it all, sacrificing her integrity to protect her child. This places Molly in an impossible position, a daughter forced to choose between two people who shaped her childhood. Rick was once a father she trusted, someone she sought approval from. But now, he's not just a blackmailer, he's someone who exploited his own daughter's guilt for selfish gain. And Alexis, the mother she admired for her integrity, has become someone who betrayed the very values she taught her children. The choice is paralyzing. Every option is a wound. If she forgives Alexis, she must accept that truth can be twisted for maternal love. If she sides with Rick, she must turn a blind eye to manipulation and cruelty. And if she rejects both, the Davis family, already fragile, may shatter completely. Christina, with raw honesty and pain, hopes her confession will open Molly's heart. But the inner shift Christina has undergone creates an unexpected domino effect, plunging Molly into a deeper crisis of identity than ever before. This is no longer just a story about forgiveness or accountability. It's about redefining trust, family, and morality when every belief you once held has been upended. Every step Christina takes now carries both the hope of healing and the risk of further conflict. And Molly, though she may be moved by her sister's sincerity, still finds her mind questioning whether all the sacrifices were truly justifiable. In a family where truth and lies have always walked side by side, every attempt at resolution can just as easily become the spark for an even more devastating explosion, one deeper, more profound, and harder to recover from than ever before. The Davis family is undergoing an intense and irrevocable fracture, not merely the simmering cracks of the past, but a total, widespread collapse with no sign of stopping. Secrets have been exposed, lies unmasked, and sacrifices once quietly made to protect family bonds have now returned like double-edged blades, cutting deep into the already fragile trust between each member. What's truly terrifying is that, even as everyone reels from the revelation of Rick's blackmail against Alexis, a silent but dramatic shift is taking place, subtle psychological and behavioral adjustments from each family member that are gradually dragging everything into a chaotic, uncontrollable spiral. These adjustments, initially seen as efforts to adapt and survive, have become ticking time bombs, igniting a cascade of increasingly destructive events. Christina, having accepted the painful truth that she is the root cause of the family's current tragedy, begins to spiral into a haunted mental state. She is no longer merely confronting guilt. She must now live with the agonizing knowledge that her mother's efforts to shield the family stemmed from a grave mistake of her own. The trauma no longer belongs to the past, it has seeped into the present, driving Christina to act erratically, withdrawing emotionally, and at times, lashing out with terrifying intensity. This psychological shift adds a new layer of heaviness to an already strained household, triggering further emotional chain reactions among the others. Conversations grow cold. Glances become laced with suspicion, and the once comforting silences between the three women who used to lean on each other now serve as stark reminders of their unraveling bond. Alexis, once the rock-solid center for her two daughters, has now become the most doubted. Every decision she's made is now under scrutiny, every action interpreted as concealment. She can't explain, can't apologize, and can't defend her silence, because the truth is undeniable. She chose to protect one daughter by hiding a crime, and the price is the erosion of trust from both. No longer the balancing force, Alexis has become the focal point of disappointment and anger, caught between two daughters at odds and herself slowly falling apart. She watches everything slip away as each step in her once familiar home now feels alien, estranged from the very sanctuary she once fought to preserve. Molly, with her sharp rationality and unwavering faith in morality, suffers the greatest shock. Learning that Rick, the father she always kept at a cautious distance, had exploited her sister's mistake to manipulate her mother shakes the very foundation of her values. But what angers her most is that Alexis endured the blackmail silently, never telling her, allowing her to live in the illusion that her mother was a woman of integrity who never compromised. Now, Molly feels doubly betrayed, by a father whose actions were despicable, and by a mother whose silence was unforgivable. She no longer knows whom to side with when both parental figures have, for their own reasons, shattered her trust. Molly cannot forgive instantly, nor can she pretend nothing has happened. Her moral compass is in disarray, torn between truth and emotion. Meanwhile, a psychological contagion of sorts spreads within the family. Christina's inner torment, Alexis's silent turmoil, and Molly's searing internal conflict all unfold simultaneously, intertwined, colliding, forming a dense web of emotional complexity beyond resolution. This doesn't just amplify the tension, it sparks new explosions, endless arguments, words that wound to the core, and impulsive decisions that may cause irreversible separation. The Davis family is no longer a unified entity but three fragmented individuals drifting in different directions, each bearing wounds, betrayals, and unanswered questions about whether there's a way back. The current explosion isn't caused by newly discovered truths but by old ones buried for too long, now unearthed, too deeply rooted to be healed. Each person has their own pain, their own reaction, their own chosen path. But no matter how far they go or how hard they try to cut ties, the truth follows like a shadow, making every step away hurt even more. The Davis family is facing a crisis not only of trust but of identity. Who are they if they are no longer a family? And is there anything left that can save them from the storm that continues to consume everything in darkness? When obsession becomes reality, when adaptation becomes destruction, the only thing left is choice, to accept the disintegration, or to fight desperately for the last glimmer of hope amidst the wreckage once called family. After all her internal torment and days haunted by guilt, Christina finally makes the most important decision of her life, to confess everything. No more hiding, no more avoidance, no excuses. She chooses to abandon her fear of punishment, to face the consequences, rather than let her mother continue to silently bear the burden. This decision opens a completely new chapter, not the end of troubles, but the beginning of an unprecedented chain of madness, a domino effect no one, not even Christina, could foresee. In trying to save Alexis, the mother who sacrificed everything to protect her, Christina accepts danger, risking her honor and future to bring the truth into the light, hoping it will bring peace to them both. But what she didn't anticipate was that this brave act would plunge the Davis family into an even deeper chaos, a new layer of hell no one expected. Because when one truth is revealed, others tend to surface on their own. And as Christina confesses and Alexis steps forward to shield her daughter from public backlash, an unexpected consequence unfolds. Both, in their despair and hurt, unintentionally or otherwise, begin to place blame on Molly. They see her harsh reactions, her strict moral standards, and her emotional distance as factors that pushed Christina to the edge and left Alexis to bear everything alone. To them, Molly is no longer just an unsympathetic sister, but a symbol of judgment. The very force that blocked any chance of reconciliation or understanding. And from that moment, everything spins out of control. Molly, the one who had once been the family's voice of reason, now finds herself isolated. She is thrust into a position no one desires. Both a witness to wrongdoing and a victim accused for daring to speak the truth, now seen as the indirect cause of the crisis. Her anger is no longer just emotional, it becomes a tidal wave. She cannot believe that her mother and sister, whom she always loved and wanted to protect, have turned on her at the very moment she needs them most. Deeply wounded and misunderstood at her core, Molly no longer wants reconciliation. She retreats, emotionally detaches, and begins to live in a world filled with doubt, where the words of familial love now echo like bitter mockery. From here, a new form of obsession takes root, not guilt, but the trauma of being betrayed by those closest to her. Christina, though momentarily at peace after confessing, now must face a new truth. Her seemingly noble act has driven her sister into deeper pain. Alexis, who thought things might return to normal after the confession, now senses an irreparable rift between her daughters, and no longer knows what to believe. Each passing day sees the Davis family falling further into emotional fragmentation. Everyone is trying to survive, but no one knows whose hand to reach for anymore. The situation is rapidly spiraling beyond control. Every action, no matter how well intended, is now warped by accumulated pain. Family dinners are suffocatingly silent. Once affectionate gazes now reflect only coldness and suspicion. No one dares to speak first. No one is willing to step forward, each is burdened with unhealed wounds, private anguish, and the fear that any attempt at reconciliation will be misunderstood, rejected, or trampled once more. Christina lives in torment, unsure whether she did the right thing or only made everything worse. Alexis clings to fading memories, trying not to lose hope. Molly lives in isolation, her heart burning with disappointment, her trust slowly freezing over. The Davis family is now divided not just emotionally, but from the very idea of family they once tried so hard to preserve. There is no absolute right or wrong anymore, only countless fractures, bleeding truths, and endless, painful choices. In the darkness enveloping what was once a warm home, an uncertain future looms. Is there still a chance for them to reunite, or is all that remains the memory of a family that once existed, before truth and pride destroyed every last hope? The Davis family is on the brink of total destruction, and it is no longer a theory or a vague warning but a harsh, undeniable reality. What was once a strong family foundation, where 3 women stood together through storms, is now crumbling piece by piece, crushed under the weight of truth, betrayal, and pent-up emotions. The shock the family is experiencing comes not just from Christina's confession of guilt, or Rick's blackmail of Alexis, but from the fact that the very people who once loved each other unconditionally are now turning against each other, accusing and denying each other. It is a devastating collapse that not only shatters trust but is reshaping their entire being, forcing each member to look at themselves in a darker light than they have ever seen before. One of the haunting new adjustments taking place is not healing, but a crippling change from within, as each member of the family adjusts to isolation, to unapologetic disappointment, to a sense of betrayal by those they trusted most. Christina is no longer the bubbly, strong girl she once was, but is slowly sinking into a sense of inescapable guilt. Torn between taking responsibility and feeling hurt at being pushed out of the family circle. Molly has closed her heart, building a ruthlessly hard defense, willing to use her mind against her own flesh and blood. And Alexis, who was once the center of balance and the guiding light for both girls, is now the most disoriented. The control Alexis once had, control over her emotions, her behavior, and her role as a guiding mother, is gone. She felt pushed out of her position as the only one who could resolve the conflict. And in that stalemate, one of the scariest things happened. Alexis began to slide back into the alcoholism she had fought so hard to break, with no other way to ease her psychological pain. Alexis turned to the thing that had destroyed her as a last resort to temporarily numb her emotions. But this did not ease the pain, but only increased her loss of control, pushing her away from reality and her family, causing everything to become more chaotic. Alexis's return to addiction was not only a sign of personal decline, but also a symbol of the total failure of a family that had prided itself on its resilience. No one was sober enough to save the other. No one was willing to reach out and pull the other back from the abyss. Instead, each person was falling freely at their own pace, with their own speed and tragedy. And that simmering rift is turning into a giant disaster, capable of swallowing up any last chance of reconciliation. The trouble is not only in the fractured relationships but now spreads outward. As friends, colleagues, and society begin to look at the Davis family with suspicion and scrutiny. Rumors, ostracism, and disappointment from those who once admired them add to the suffocating situation. Alexis, in a drunken stupor, may start saying things she shouldn't, exposing secrets that should have been kept. Christina, with her unstable mood, may rush into dangerous relationships or self-destructive behavior to punish herself. And Molly, pushed to the limit, may choose to leave the family completely to find a path without anyone from the past. The disaster is not just on the surface, it's an internal disintegration, a slow death of the trust, the memories, the hopes that once existed between three women who seemed inseparable. Now they no longer sit at the same table, no longer look each other in the eye, and no longer even speak the same emotional language. Alexis is lost between her two daughters, Christina is struggling with herself, and Molly has turned herself into an emotionless stone wall. The Devisas are no longer a family, they are three broken pieces, suspended in midair, unsure whether anyone will try to fix them or just wait for them to fall apart. And when alcohol takes over Alexis again, when pain becomes Christina's only companion, when coldness replaces love in Molly's heart, the real disaster is no longer in the future, it is present in every moment.